beginning of the end for a female pirate. Now, let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive this. The statistics are not in your favor, especially if you're a woman. History loves to glamorize pirate life, but nobody writes sea shanties about what happens after you're captured. Spoiler, it involves a lot less rum and a lot more dysentery. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere cozy, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where my sleepy sea dogs are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're surrounded now. The cannons don't even need to fire. Your ship's outgunned, outmanned, and honestly out of rum. So when that rope ladder hits your deck, you know it's over. Hands in the air, boots off, and one very cold man in uniform is already reading you a list of charges: piracy, murder, theft, impersonating an officer. And did you really use a priest as bait for a trap? Tacky. But here's the twist. You're not just a pirate. You're a female pirate. And the world doesn't quite know what to do with that. Back in the 17th and 18th centuries, piracy was a man's game, at least on paper. Maritime laws were blunt and brutal, and the assumption was always that the accused was male. So when a woman was hauled into court in shackles and sea-salted skirts, judges had to improvise. Sometimes they were confused, sometimes fascinated, sometimes absolutely furious, but fair. Not often. Anne Bonny and Mary Read, two of the most famous female pirates in history, were captured in 1720, and their trials became sensation fodder. People couldn't get enough of the idea of sword-wielding women yelling obscenities and stealing ships. They weren't tried just as pirates, they were tried as women who had broken every social norm, every rule, every expectation of the fairer sex, and that made their crimes seem twice as bad, at least in the eyes of the powdered wig set. But before the courtroom drama, there's the capture. And oh, what a capture it is. You're hauled into a long boat, wrists bound in thick rope that leaves marks, and your head is shoved down because heaven forbid you get a peek at the sun. The sailors around you speak in loud, mocking tones. They don't know whether to treat you as a prisoner, a curiosity, or a creature from some bawdy tavern tale. One even dares to whisper, "Never seen a lass on deck before, 'cept for mermaids." Gross. You're thrown into the hold of a ship so sanitized compared to yours, you almost miss the mildew and half-rotted biscuits back on your sloop. Almost. Down here, it's dark, damp, and smells of wet wool and vinegar-soaked boots. You're not alone. Your crewmates are slumped against the walls, and one is quietly humming an old sea tune as if it'll keep her sane. You close your eyes and pretend you're back in the sun, in better days, when you were still raiding Spanish gold and giggling over crude maps drawn on stolen silk. Historians still argue whether most female pirates were actually leaders of their own ships or simply tiglongs who happened to pick up a dagger when things got rough. What we do know is that once captured, their gender became a sort of legal chaos button. Some officers didn't believe women could even be pirates. Others were more than happy to punish them just as harshly, not more. If you're lucky, you're sent to a port city jail to await trial. If you're unlucky, the captain decides you're not worth the paperwork and has you thrown overboard with iron at your ankles. Not as rare as you'd hope. But tonight, let's say you're lucky. You arrive in Kingston, or Port Royal, or Charleston, wherever your final voyage dragged you ashore, and you're marched in front of a crowd. It's humid. The sweat clings to your skin like syrup. The guards sneer, and someone in the crowd throws a tomato. You're not sure whether you're supposed to feel shame or pride. Maybe both. Your first night in jail is a masterpiece of discomfort. The straw mattress scratches like dry coral. Your cellmate is snoring, missing 3 teeth, and keeps muttering about a ghost cat that lives in the rafters. And there are rats, bold ones. One crawls across your boot and seems offended you didn't bring snacks. Still, sleep eventually comes fitful, scratchy, but there. And when you wake up, it's to the realization that your real battle is only just beginning. The courtroom is waiting, the gavel is polished, and somewhere, someone's already scribbling your story into a cheap pamphlet, selling it for $1 under the title, *The Devil in Petticoats*, *Welcome to Life After Capture, My Salty Sister. It's about to get weirder. The courtroom smells like pipe smoke, mildew, and something vaguely medicinal, like someone spilled laudanum on the bench a week ago, and no one's cleaned it up. You're shoved forward in irons, your seraph hair tied back with what was once a sock, and you're painfully aware of how many eyes are watching. Not just the judges in their itchy wigs, but the townsfolk in the gallery craning their necks for a peek at the pirate girl. And that's the thing, they don't know what to make of you. You don't fit the script. Pirates, in their minds, are burly, bearded men with scowls and parrots and long dramatic death speeches. You're squinting under the gaslight, trying not to sneeze, and wondering if your tunic still smells like the smoked herring you slept on last week. You're charged, of course. Piracy, murder, conspiracy, unlawful possession of a French cookbook, yes, really, and wearing male garments on the open sea. Because heaven forbid you wear breeches when boarding a galleon. This is where things get strange, because while male pirates often faced a swift, unsentimental process charges, a short trial, and then a walk to the gallows, you're a walking headline. The court doesn't just want justice, it wants a show. Historians still debate how much of the courtroom drama was performative, especially for women, but accounts from trials like that of Anne Bonny and Mary Reed's suggest a blend of fascination and fury. In their 1720 trial, for instance, witnesses recounted them fighting with the vigor of any man. The court transcripts, likely polished for effect, portray the women as foul-mouthed, fearless, and impossible to ignore. It's hard to say how much is real and how much was editorial flair, but the spectacle, that was very real. In your case, the prosecutor is a man who hasn't smiled since 1689. He reads your crimes aloud, pausing for dramatic effect, as though he's auditioning for a role in Pirates of Penance and Morals. The charges stack up, like cannonballs, and the crowd murmurs in delight. You glance over and see someone sketching you. Great, that's going in the pamphlet. Now here comes the gender curveball, because you're not just being tried for piracy, you're being tried for betraying your station. You were supposed to be a mother, a wife, a bonnet-wearing pillar of society who did needlepoint and fainted at the sight of blood. Instead, you stabbed a bosun with a spoon and stole a priest's boots. And worse, you were good at it. Judges, at the time, often leaned into moral commentary when sentencing female criminals. It wasn't enough to punish the crime. They had to scold the audacity. You might get a sermon about unnatural behavior, a rant about the corruption of womanhood, or even a reference to Eve, just to really drive the biblical guilt home. But here's where it gets deliciously ironic. The same society that condemned you couldn't stop talking about you. Public interest in female pirates was off the charts. Booklets, sketches, dramatized accounts, some wildly inaccurate off the printing presses. You became a kind of scandalous celebrity, the 18th century equivalent of going viral, but with more beheadings and less filter lighting. Pamphleteers had a field day. They printed titles like The Pirate Lass of Port Torture and Hellcat in Heels. Most of the details were made up. Your dialogue sounded like Shakespeare on rum, and your clothing was always suspiciously low-cut. But the public didn't care. You were an escape from their dreary tea-soaked lives, a swashbuckling fantasy with cleavage. And meanwhile, you sat in jail because fame didn't always mean mercy. Some judges used your notoriety as justification for a harsh sentence. An example must be made, they'd say, wagging their judicial fingers. Others feared the public would riot if you were executed too quickly. And so, your fate was often dragged out, examined, debated like a fashionable scandal. At night, your cell fills with whispered rumors. One guard swears you'll hang within the week. Another says you'll be sent to Barbados. A third claims you're being considered for a royal pardon because the king finds you curiously entertaining. You don't know what to believe, and frankly, the ghost cat story is starting to sound more credible than the humans. You sleep in fits, dreams muddled with courtroom speeches and rotting ship biscuits. One night, you imagine a gallows with a velvet rope and a crowd throwing roses instead of stones. The next, it's just rats applauding. By day, you're marched back into the courtroom, again and again, as more witnesses come forward. Some claim they saw you personally light a Spanish port on fire. Others say you saved their lives. One insists you healed his parrot with a seaweed poultice. You don't even remember this man, or the parrot. The press loves it. Every new claim becomes a headline. You're no longer a person, you're a legend. It's flattering, in a nightmarish kind of way. And then comes the ruling. The judge clears his throat. The sentence is long, too long, because it's not just about guilt, it's about gender. He calls you an unfortunate example of womanhood, undone, and a cautionary tale for the virtuous. You try not to roll your eyes. You fail. The crowd gasps. Some cheer. One woman faints dramatically. You're sentenced to death, but the story's not over. Because female pirates had one last card to play, and oh, did they know how to use it. You stand there, chains clinking, heart pounding under your sweat-drenched linen, because now your neck has a date with the hangman. But just before the gavel lands like a death knell, you say the words that have saved more than a few pirate souls. But I'm pregnant. The room stops. The judge blinks. The scribe lowers his quill. A guard drops his biscuit. See, in 18th century courtrooms, claiming pregnancy wasn't just a delay tactic, it was a legal wedge that cracked open the door to survival. Executing a pregnant woman was considered both morally and legally taboo. The unborn child, after all, was seen as an innocent soul, and even the most bloodthirsty magistrate didn't want to answer for hanging a fetus. And so begins the next strange chapter in your piratical punishment, the pleading the belly process. Yes, that was the actual term. Grim, clinical, and weirdly poetic. A jury of matrons, usually midwives or respectable local women, was summoned to examine you. You're hauled into a room that smells like cloves and damp wool, where women in stiff bodices peer at you with the kind of judgment only 18th century society could perfect. They're not here for small talk. They're here to check for signs of quickening, that is, fetal movement. Historians still argue whether the belly plea was often faked successfully. Records show many pirates suddenly discovered they were with child just as the noose was being prepared. Some probably were genuinely pregnant. Life at sea didn't exactly come with monthly check-ins, but others, well, relied on theatrical timing, stuffed bodices, and a confident delivery. Let's just say you're banking on ambiguity. The examination is humiliating, awkward, and far from medical. One matron whispers that you're just bloated from sea biscuits. Another pokes your side like she's testing bread dough. But eventually, they nod. Officially, you're pregnant. Unofficially, you've bought yourself time. And what time it is, your execution is delayed. Not cancelled, don't get too comfortable, but postponed until after you've given birth. Some women, like Mary Read, never made it that far. She died in prison, likely of fever. Others, well, they gave birth to children who would never know their mother outside of iron bars. The pregnancy card created a strange grey zone in pirate justice. You're alive, but barely. You're kept under guard, fed slightly better gruel, and moved to a slightly less rat-infested cell. One midwife checks on you occasionally. She never smiles. Once, she mutters something about unnatural women, and crosses herself after seeing your ankle tattoo. You spend your days in a fog of uncertainty. Will they spare you permanently? Will you be allowed to raise your child? Or will you hang once the baby takes its first breath? There are whispers. Sometimes, women who gave birth in custody were quietly pardoned. Other times, their children were taken away and the mothers led straight to the gallows. There's no standard playbook, just the whims of judges, the sway of public opinion, and whether the governor's wife happens to find your story romantic. You keep your belly slightly puffed, even on days when you doubt your own claim. You practice moving as though you're with child. You lie still at night, wondering if every twitch in your stomach is real or just hope wearing a costume. One day, a preacher visits. He talks of redemption, of God's mercy, of how a child can be your salvation. You nod politely, but in your head, you're thinking of sea foam and silver cutlasses, and the way your captain used to whistle through her teeth when plotting a raid. There's a part of you, no matter how filthy the cell, how bitter the stew, that refuses to be reformed. And outside, the world keeps talking. The tabloids now have a new headline. The pirate belle with the baby bump. They speculate wildly. Some say your child will be born with a tiny sword in hand. Others claim you made a pact with Neptune. There's even a woodcut of you battling a kraken while in labor. It's ridiculous, but it sells. You're not in control of your story anymore. It's been hijacked, twisted, sensationalized, but you're still breathing. And in this grim theater of pirate punishment, that's no small feat. Weeks, months later, your cell door creaks open. A guard enters. He looks less smug than usual. Governor wants to see you. You're hauled into a drawing room that smells of citrus and money. The governor is there, pale wig too tall, rings too shiny. He eyes You like one might examine a slightly moldy painting. You've garnered quite a reputation, he says slowly. The people are divided. You hold your breath. Some say we should make an example of you. Others say hanging a mother would be distasteful. He sips something expensive. You will not be executed. Not today. Relief doesn't wash over you, it trickles, uncertain. You've been spared again. But the next phase, unknown. Your sentence has changed, not disappeared. The gallows are no longer calling your name, but something else is. Transport, labor, exile, pregnancy, got you out of the courtroom alive. Now you have to survive whatever comes next. They wake you before dawn, with the kind of gentle politeness that involves a musket butt and a barked order. You're handed a shapeless dress that smells like lion moths, and told to look decent. A confusing instruction, considering your current scent is mostly iron chains and stubborn defiance. You're not being hanged. That's the good news. The bad news, you're being transported. For many convicted female pirates, particularly those deemed too scandalous to hang but too inconvenient to free, transportation was the compromise. That meant exile, usually to a penal colony across the sea, where you'd work off your debt to society under the blazing sun, surrounded by guards who measured mercy in inches. Today, your destination is unclear. The guard just grunts colony and shoves you toward the harbor. That could mean Barbados, or Virginia, or somewhere even more exotic, like Mauritius, where you'll get malaria before you even finish saying the word. You're loaded onto a transport ship, not a pirate vessel. You notice grimly, no joy in this one. No secret rum stash, no stolen parrots, no unnamed peg-leg Janices, just rows of chained passengers, most of them coughing, some already asleep, and one woman braiding someone else's hair, with hands that look like they've never stopped shaking. The ship smells like a recipe for seasickness, brine, sweat, chamber pots, and despair. The hold is worse. You're packed below with dozens of other convicts, some weeping, some silent, a few muttering to themselves like they're giving a sermon to rats. One woman claims she used to be a duchess, another is missing an ear. You're not sure which story disturbs you more. Historians still argue whether transportation was meant as punishment or population control. Either way, for you, it's exile with shackles. You're no longer a person, you're a cargo, a name on a ledger, a woman-shaped line item. Days blend into nights. You sleep curled round your knees, using your arm as a pillow and hoping that ship rats have better things to chew than your boots. One night, you dream of mangoes, the next, of cannon fire. By the third week, you forget what solid ground feels like. The guards aren't cruel, exactly, just indifferent, which somehow stings more. One of them, a boy barely old enough to shave, sometimes tosses you hard bread when no one's looking. You call him Soft Heart, and he blushes but never meets your eye. Food is a kind of vague punishment in itself. Salt beef, that's more salt than beef. Water with the occasional mysterious floater. Hardtack that could double as masonry. Every bite is a gamble. There's no privacy. You relieve yourself in a shared bucket, sing to yourself when you can't sleep, and learn which plank creaks like a scream when someone steps too hard. You track days by the way the sky brightens through the cracks in the hull. At some point, your stomach stops aching. You're not sure if that means it's getting better or worse. And yet, despite it all, there's a strange resilience among the women, a kind of defiant sisterhood. Stories are traded like currency. One woman was caught stealing silk stockings from a bishop. Another lead a revolt on a merchant ship, disguised as a cabin boy. You tell your tale, but with edits. You leave out the part where you cried the night before your trial. You add extra flair to the duel you barely won. It helps pass the time. One evening, someone starts humming a lullaby from the Canary Islands. Others join in, voices low and cracked. It's a moment of eerie beauty in a place that's otherwise void of softness. You finally dock. The sun is blinding. The air is thick with new smells, tropical blooms, roasted fish, something distant and sour like fermenting fruit. You squint through the chains, trying to make sense of the landscape. It's lush, green, overwhelming, but also imprisoning. There's no real escape here. Just jungle, ocean, and duty. You're assigned to a plantation, sugar, most likely, or tobacco. The work is grueling, hot, monotonous. You're not whipped at, least not yet, but your hands blister after one day in the field. Your legs ache from standing. Your back screams by sundown. Sleep becomes more like a coma. You dream in dull, repetitive loops. Your belly, real or not, becomes an issue. The overseers don't want to deal with a child. You are placed on light duty, which just means you get to sort beans in a hot shack while being watched by a woman who speaks 3 languages and smiles like she knows every terrible secret of the universe. Some women break down, others harden. You adapt, slowly, grudgingly. One day you catch your reflection in a rain barrel. Your hair's tied back with twine. Your skin is sun-darkened, shoulders broader from lifting sacks of grain. You barely recognize yourself. And somehow, that's comforting. The pirate girl they arrested, she wouldn't have survived this, but this version of you, she might just last long enough to find a way out. And there are whispers of pardons, of owners who forget to report a death, of women who vanish into the jungle and are never seen again except in tales told to scare the new arrivals. Transportation was supposed to break you, turn you into labor, into silence, but you still hum sea shanties under your breath. You still dream of salt spray and stolen gold, and somewhere, deep inside, the pirate in you is still waiting, still planning. There's no calendar in the plantation shack, but you measure time by blisters, how long they take to burst, scab, and come back again. Your hands are now calloused in places you didn't even know had nerves. Your back, permanently angry. You used to know the constellations by name. Now, you count them like sheep when the cramps keep you from sleep. And yet, one morning just after the rooster screams directly into your soul, you realize you've survived longer than anyone expected. You're not dead, you're not free either, but you're still here. You've outlived the rumor that you collapsed in the field last month, outlasted the overseer who said pirate women don't last a week. Even the parrot that used to curse in 3 languages died before you. Did victory small, satisfying, immensely. Still, you're no longer just a transported pirate. You're a cautionary tale among the staff, a curiosity to the overseer's wife, who once asked if you still remember how to tie a sailor's knot for embroidery. Of course, and a blurry memory to the court that sentenced you. They've moved on. You haven't. Historians still argue whether female pirates had any hope of reintegration after transportation. Most were dumped into anonymity, their records tapering off like forgotten footnotes. A few popped up years later in church registries or burial records, but whether they ever stopped being prisoners, mentally or legally, is another question entirely. But you learn the rhythms of this new life. Which guards nap, which ones gossip, which ones can be bribed with dried mango. You become invisible in just the right way, not gone, but overlooked. And that is its own kind of safety. Until one day, a name drifts through the plantation like smoke. Pardon. It starts as a whisper. One of the other women, Mary, the one who claims she once served tea to a French queen, says the colonial governor's been sending clemency notices. Not for everyone, not often, but sometimes, someone gets released. Released here doesn't mean freedom with a pony. It means indentured service, domestic work, scrubbing floors in a magistrate's home instead of hoeing sugarcane under a sun that burns through skin like parchment. But it's not chains, and sometimes, rarely, it leads to full freedom. You start behaving just enough to get noticed. You speak respectfully when spoken to. You fold your rags into neat piles. You even help deliver a baby when one of the laundresses goes into labor mid-shift. The midwife mutters, "You've done this before," and you don't correct her. Eventually, a letter arrives with your name on it, half misspelled but close enough. It smells like ink and unfamiliar perfume. It's sealed with wax and opens with asterisk Her Majesty's Colonial Authority decrees. Asterisk you skip ahead, too impatient. You've been reassigned, not free, not yet, but moved, promoted, questionable. But you'll take it. You're placed in the house of a local officer. He's old. He smells like pipe tobacco and lemon soap. His wife eyes you like a chess piece she didn't ask for. You clean, you fetch, you serve tea. You do not make eye contact unless spoken to. Still, there are perks. You sleep indoors now. You eat food that has spices in it. You even get to wear a second-hand dress that doesn't scratch like straw dipped in vinegar. And every now and then, you steal a glance out the window at the sea dot. It's still there, still endless, still calling, but you're realistic now. You know you're not getting a ship and a crew overnight. So instead, you collect small freedoms, a moment alone in the kitchen, a book left unattended on a chair, a sliver of moonlight on a clear night, when no one's yelling and the air smells faintly like nutmeg. One night, While cleaning the officer's study, you stumble across a map. Old, detailed, creased at the corners. You trace the coastline with your finger and find your old haunt, the bay where your ship once docked. Before all this, you smile, just slightly. Even if you never leave this house, that part of youth, a map reading, rope tying, pirate, is still alive. The officer's wife enters. You tuck the map away. She raises an eyebrow but says nothing. Back to scrubbing. Sometimes you hear ships docking at the port and wonder who's aboard. Could be merchants, could be soldiers, could be someone from the past, or maybe just new cargo, new pirates, new women stepping into the same story you thought you'd closed. The plantation still whispers. Rumors of escaped women who became smugglers in the highlands, of guards who fell in love with pirates and helped them flee, of women who changed names, married farmers, and lived quietly ever after, planting herbs and occasionally winking at storm clouds. Most of it's probably fantasy, but even so, fantasy kept you alive once. It might do it again. The officer dies quietly one night in his study, face down in a half-finished letter and a glass of something amber. You're the one who finds him. You hesitate before alerting anyone, not out of disrespect, but because, well, you don't quite know what comes next. You're technically his property. His passing might mean yours. The household erupts into organized chaos. His widow cries, but not too much. A young lawyer arrives with hair too perfect for this climate and declares that the estate will be restructured. That word rarely bodes well. You're reassessed like furniture. His records are dug up, and among the sea of receipts and invoices is your transport notice, yellowed and smudged, but still legible. It lists your crime as piracy, insubordination, and conduct unfitting of a woman. Charming. There's a debate over what to do with you. The lawyer says you're technically bonded to the house, but the widow is convinced she doesn't need the help. And anyway, she never liked your attitude. You're not sure whether to be offended or relieved. And then someone brings up auction. Yes, auction. Because even though the year is inching forward, and the British Empire is slowly, begrudgingly, tiptoeing toward the idea that human lives are not commodities, you fall in a grey area. You're not enslaved, not entirely indentured, not free. You're classified, a woman of legal inconvenience. You're put on a list, and that's how you find yourself standing on a dusty platform, hair slicked back with sweat, staring into a crowd of sugar planters, clerks, and opportunists who squint at you like they're picking out fruit. You're sold to a woman named Mrs. Culpeper. She runs a reform residence, which, you quickly discover, is code for sad nuns, silent dormitories, and long hours of needlepoint. The building is tall, narrow, and smells perpetually of wet wool and lavender gone slightly off. You share a room with 6 other women, all of whom either snore like cannon fire or talk in their sleep about ships that burned. Here, the punishment is subtler. There are no whips, no chains, just rules, curfews, recitations, a constant undercurrent of judgment. You must wake at dawn, so until your fingers ache, read scriptures until your eyes blur. You're not allowed to speak during meals. You're certainly not allowed to mention the sea. Mrs. Culpeper believes in moral restoration. She says it with a breathy conviction, as if she personally invented virtue. She once tells you, "I believe all women can be returned to decency." You resist the urge to ask if that includes pirates who once threw a harpoon through a gambling cheat's thigh. Historians still debate whether these institutions were intended to rehabilitate or simply repress. In your case, it feels like both. You're dressed in grey. You sleep under a crucifix. You're reminded daily that your past is a shame to be erased, not a story to be told. And yet, you find tiny rebellions. You sew sea monsters into the hem of your apron, tiny, barely visible, but there. You hum shanties under your breath while folding linens. You write poetry on scraps of laundry parchment, burying it under floorboards like contraband. There's one girl, quiet, maybe 16, with calloused fingers and eyes too old for her face. You catch her once tracing an anchor into the fogged window pane. You say nothing, but later, you slip her a page with a half-remembered knot diagram drawn in soap. She nods, doesn't smile, but her eyes flicker with something familiar. Every month, you're made to sit through a moral inventory, a personal evaluation led by Mrs. Culpeper, who wears her rosary like a weapon. She asks questions. Do you still feel the pull of temptation? Do you think of the sea? Do you repent? You lie smoothly, rehearsed. Yes, I repent. No, I do not feel tempted. I think only of peace. She nods, satisfied, but deep inside, you're still mapping coastlines in your sleep. One day, a visitor arrives, a man from the mainland, young, wealthy, and desperately eager to seem enlightened. He's seeking domestic staff for a new estate. He wants someone reformed, someone quiet, someone with no family ties. Mrs. Culpepper offers you before the sentence is finished. You leave the residence with a bundle of belongings that smell like rosemary and regret. The estate is vast, empty feeling despite its grandeur. Your job, housemaid. You clean chandeliers, polish doorknobs, and fluff cushions that no one ever sits on. The master of the house is rarely home. You rarely see him, and that's fine, because in the attic there's a window, a tall, crooked pane with a perfect view of the harbor, and through it you watch ships. You count masts like sheep. You name them the Wishbone, the Crimson Whisper, the Second Chance. You make up their stories. Some carry silk, some carry fugitives, some carry ghosts. You're not on any of them, not yet, but for the first time in a long while, you're not afraid of the sea. You're dreaming again. The attic becomes your sanctuary. Each evening, after the kitchen fires are banked and the other maids have disappeared into yawns and threadbare blankets, you climb the creaky stairs, up here, under a slanted roof that leaks during storms and creaks like an old captain's knees. You let yourself become a pirate again. You perch on a crate, knees pulled to your chest, staring out that window. Ships glide in and out of port, some tilted with weight, others graceful and hollow like birds. Midstream, you imagine yourself on each one, changing flags, changing names, vanishing over the horizon before anyone has time to miss you. But you're still scrubbing floors for a man who owns 5 coats and 0 conversations. He doesn't mistreat you. In fact, he barely sees you. You're another part of the decor, like the dusty globe in the corner or the rusting musket on the parlor wall. This kind of invisibility used to sting. Now, it's a shield. Each week, the laundrywoman brings back gossip with the linens, a runaway, a ship lost in a storm, a woman seen walking into the jungle, barefoot and smiling. You tuck the stories away like gold coins. Your body is changing, less wiry, more settled. The muscles in your arms, once hardened by rigging and restraint, are soft and now strong from lifting wood buckets, but different. You miss the feel of a cutlass in your hand, of salt-stung wind slapping your face, but comfort, that's new and dangerous, like a siren with sweet lullabies and sharpened teeth. Historians still argue whether former female pirates ever truly stopped being pirates or if they just adapted, waiting for an opening. Your own story seems to hang in that balance. One day, a boy arrives at the estate, a messenger, awkward, sunburned, full of importance. He's delivering a parcel for the master. You're sent to receive it. He hands you the box. It's small, tied in waxed string. But what catches your eye isn't the parcel. It's what's peeking from the edge of his satchel. A map, a sea chart no less, unfolded slightly, creased, detailed. Your breath catches. The boy notices. You read charts. You don't answer. Instead, you tilt your head, giving the barest nod. My uncle used to be Navy, he offers, proud. Taught me a bit. Said women don't usually know star paths. You smile gently. Your uncle sounds reminded. He laughs awkwardly, and then just like that he's gone. But the map, it haunts you. That glimpse of coastlines, of names written in curled ink, of destinations that feel like half-remembered songs. That night, you pull out a piece of scrap cloth and start drawing from memory. The trade winds, the sugar roots, the path between here and the cove where you once anchored for 3 days, waiting on a Spanish treasure galley that never came. Your fingers remember. Your brain remembers. The sea never lets go. Not really. You begin to gather things. Slowly, carefully. A flask, a piece of flint. An old pair of boots left behind by a drunk gardener. Nothing criminal. Not yet. But preparatory. A younger you would have shouted your escape from the rooftops. Dared fate to catch you. But now, you work in whispers, in daydreams, in plans carved on soap and hidden in floor cracks. And just when you think you're ready to vanish, to slip out under the cloak of fog or carnival or monsoon, something unexpected happens. The master calls for you. This alone is unusual. He's spoken to you fewer than 5 times in as many months. But now, suddenly, he wants tea, and your presence. You prepare the tray with steady hands and a racing heart. Maybe he knows. Maybe someone saw you sketching coastlines or sneaking matches. But when you enter, he's melancholy, not stern, not suspicious. He gestures for you to sit. This is not protocol. He speaks slowly. I've heard things, he says, about your past. You freeze. But I'm not interested in old crimes, he adds, staring into the fire. Only in possibility. It turns out he once knew a pirate. A man, of course. He says the name like it's sacred, like it belonged to a ghost who could still walk through walls. They served together briefly, smuggled a few things, shared one terrifying storm. He tells you this not as a warning, but as a confession. I think the sea ruins people, he muses, but I also think it frees them. You're unsure whether to agree. You nod anyway. Then he looks at you. Looks, if you ever go back, he says softly. Don't get caught this time. That's it. No instructions, no promise. Just a door cracked open, and now it's real. You've heard a lot of things in your life. The creak of boards before a mutiny. The sound a coin makes when it hits a wooden deck just wrong. But that sentence, don't get caught this time, hits different. Not like a warning, not even like advice. It's permission. From the most unexpected of mouths. You carry the tea tray back to the kitchen like it's lined with dynamite. Every clink of porcelain echoes. Every step feels like it could tip your world overboard. But nothing happens. No guards. No lock changes. No dismissals. Just the same dusty silence. Except now you have a secret. The master's quiet blessing doesn't mean much in legal terms. He's not about to write you a pass to freedom on government parchment, but it shifts something. Your calculations become bolder. You're scavenging sharper. You start asking questions, cloaked in curiosity. Which ship is that? You ask the cook when the sails roll in. When's market day? Do they ever allow passengers? You ask about traders, transporters, and anyone known for keeping quiet for a price. One afternoon, while fetching flour, you overhear two dockhands grumbling about a woman named Maribel. She sails a small, cutter-fast, discreet, and allegedly indifferent to paperwork. The kind of person who asks no questions as long as the coin's real and the cargo doesn't bleed. You file the name away. Maribel, that might just be your passage out of here. But plans, like ships, rarely sail smoothly, because right around this time, the estate picks up a new housemaid. Her name is Elise. She's young, observant, and unfortunately inquisitive. You catch her watching you, not in the wide-eyed admiration way, but in the "you're hiding something" way. You respond by becoming just a little less interesting. You slow your pace. You make sure your humming is off-key. You purposely spill the soup just once to blend in. Still, she lingers. One night, she catches you tracing a compass rose on the frost of a window pane. You were a sailor, she whispers. You don't answer. She leans closer. Or a pirate. Your blood goes ice-cold. But then she grins. So was my sister. Pause. She didn't survive, Elise adds, but she would have liked you. That's all she says. Then she turns and walks away. You're rattled. But something inside you exhales. Maybe she's not a threat. Maybe she's just like you, someone clutching a story under her apron. Historians still argue how many women lived this kind of double life after piracy, half domestic, half dreamer. Records are rare. The system didn't care where you went as long as you stopped being a problem. But sometimes, the quiet ones left the loudest legends. The ones who didn't hang. The ones who didn't vanish. The ones who waited. You begin preparing in earnest. You sew coins into the lining of your bodice. You fashion a compass out of a magnet and a fishbone, not elegant, but charmingly scrappy. You steal a knife, not a big one, just something sharp enough to matter if things go wrong. The plan is simple. Market day, early morning, slip out during a produce delivery, blend with the carts, head for the docks, find Maribel, offer every scrap of coin and charm you've saved. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, of course, but you're choosing optimism. Today, the morning comes. You braid your hair like a housemaid, tighten your belt like a sailor, and walk out with a basket full of nothing useful and everything precious. No one stops you. The town is waking up. Bread carts, crying babies, a goat in a terrible mood. You move quickly, heart pounding against your ribs like it's trying to signal SOS. The dock appears through the mist ropes, creaking, gulls screaming like impatient dock workers. You scan the moorings, a sloop, a merchant, brig, a squat little cutter with sails that look like they've seen everything. You walk up, bold as brass, looking for Maribel. You say a deckhand, old enough to remember at least 3 coups, jerks his thumb. Inside, you climb aboard. The deck rocks beneath you, a feeling so familiar your knees nearly buckle from nostalgia. You could cry. You don't. Marable is short, scarred, and unimpressed. Who sent you? No one. You say, but I've got coin and a story. She eyes you. I only care about one of those. You open your bodice seam and pull out the pouch. She weighs it. Grunts. Where to? You smile. Anywhere but here. She nods. We leave before sundown. Don't be late. You step back onto the dock, lighter than air. You'll sneak out tonight. One last dinner. One last false smile. You turn and Elise is there, watching. She says nothing, just tilts her head. Then, with no warning, she tosses you something small and shiny. A compass. Real old, burnished brass. From my sister, she says. Then she walks away. No questions, no farewells, just an understanding. Silent and sacred, between women who carry the sea like a scar. Night falls like molasses, slow, dark, and thick with tension. The estate is quieter than usual, as if the walls themselves suspect you're up to something. You eat a meager supper with the other housemaids, salted fish and undercooked yam. Force yourself to smile when Elise makes a joke about the cook's missing eyebrows. It's her gift, that final moment of lightness. You slip away before dessert. No one follows. You walk steadily, not fast enough to draw attention, not slow enough to invite doubt. Your shoes borrowed from a forgotten closet click on the cobblestones, like a heartbeat. The compass Elise gave you sits in your pocket, warm from your hand. The dock appears as a silhouette, sails jutting like crooked teeth against the moonlit sky. Maribel's cutter, the Sprat Queen, bobs in its berth like it knows something's about to happen. You approach with caution, half expecting the trapdoor twist. A magistrate, a last-minute betrayal, a hangman stretching his neck. Instead, silence. Then Maribel, appearing from the shadows like she never left them. On time, she mutters, and gestures you aboard. You step onto the deck. No ceremony, no fanfare, just the quiet thud of escape. She leads you to a hold, barely big enough for one person and a bundle of rope. Cargo space, she says dryly. For now, you don't argue. You crouch down, tuck your skirt under your knees, and lean your head back. The wood above you creaks as she moves, and then you feel it. Motion. Real motion, not dream, not memory. The ship is leaving. The dock fades behind you like a bad story told too many times. The wind changes, the air becomes sharper. The stars open, above you like old friends. You're sailing again. Historians still debate whether escapes like yours were common or just romantic exaggerations. There's little evidence, but the folklore is thick. Women vanishing from ledgers, prisoners reappearing as traders, ex-convicts rumored to be running smugglers' dens in far-off islands. The official records rarely follow these women, but oral histories, full of shadows with salt in their veins. Your life becomes, once again, one of tides and time. Maribel isn't chatty, but she respects silence, which is almost better. You earn your keep, quickly tying knots, cleaning decks, helping to barter at ports. The crew is mostly outcasts like you. One woman with a scar that looks suspiciously like a branding. A man who sings lullabies in Spanish to his goatskin flask. A teenager who insists he once saw mermaids and will duel anyone who doubts him. No. One asks where you came from. You stop flinching every time someone says your name. You even stop using your old one. You become someone new, shaped by moonlight and spray. One night, Maribel hands you the wheel. No ceremony. Just walks up, nudges your elbow, and grunts. Try not to crash. Your hands fit the wood like they never left it. The stars are above, the sea below, and you, in the middle, finally still, while everything around you moves. Over the next weeks, you hop ports, quiet ones, places where the locals speak in low tones and currency is weighed, not counted. You don't steal, not much. You don't fight, unless necessary. You don't look back, until one evening, in a port too small for maps but too loud to ignore, you hear something that freezes your blood. A name, your real one, a man's voice, sharp, searching. You're on the edge of the market square, haggling over dried mango. You drop the fruit. Your pulse slams into panic mode. You duck behind a stall. Listen, the man is talking to a trader, describing height, possibly disguised as a sailor or servant. He has a notice with a seal, A bounty, not massive, but enough to raise interest. You're being hunted again. Historians agree that bounty hunters often trailed escaped female pirates for years, especially if the escape embarrassed a high-ranking official or made a mockery of court. You're a loose thread in a very tidy tapestry, and someone's trying to snip you off. You slink back to the ship. Maribel is scrubbing a cannonball with far too much affection. "We've got company," you whisper. She doesn't ask who, she simply says, "We leave in 15. And you do. The sea swallows your wake. You don't dock for a long time after. That supplies come from floating trades. Messages passed between ships with signal flags and sealed tins. You become part of the ghost network ships that never officially dock. People who never ask. Places that don't exist on most charts dot your past. Once a chain around your neck becomes currency. You teach others how to vanish, how to forge logs, how to mimic accents. You start drawing maps again, only this time they're yours. Routes no one else knows. You're no longer running. You're sailing free, and freedom. It looks nothing like you imagined. It's smaller, quieter, more precious. You still sleep with one hand near a knife. You still count shadows. But when the wind is right and the sails are full, you feel weightless. Maybe you'll dock again. Maybe you'll find an island with a tavern and no questions. Maybe you'll open a bakery and name the loaves after battle cries. Or maybe you'll sail until your bones become part of the sea. For now, the stars are above. The compass points forward, and behind you, only stories. There's a particular kind of silence that lives out here between waves, beneath stars, behind sails that barely flap in the warm, patient wind. It's not the silence of fear. That was back on land, in cells and courtrooms. This is the silence of invisibility, of freedom that no one applauds, but you feel down to the marrow. You're no longer listed as property, no longer referred to as the female pirate with a raised eyebrow and a smug smirk. Now, you're just someone who knows how to handle a rope and read storms better than most maps. But some days, memories sneak in like tidewater under the floorboards. You think of the courtroom, the matron jury, that cellmate who muttered about ghost cats. You remember the whispered rumors of others' names you never knew, fates you never saw, the ones who didn't get lucky, the ones who played the same cards and lost anyway. Historians still debate whether women like you were statistical flukes or part of a wider pattern that got washed out of the records. Most official logs didn't bother with detail. Convict, female removed. That's all you were worth on parchment. But oral stories linger, like barnacles, passed along by dock workers and firelight and women who remember. You keep a journal, now scratched onto canvas scraps and stashed in a waterproof pouch, not for legacy, not for fame, just so someone, someday, might find your story and know that you existed beyond the gallows. You write about Elise. You write about Maribel. You write about the captain who taught you how to swing from rigging with a blade between your teeth and how you broke 2 ribs trying. Sometimes you write down dreams, not the sleepy kind, but the big, loud, impossible ones. Like starting your own crew, your own ship. You float the idea to Maribel one quiet evening. She grunts. You got 5 years worth of quiet karma to repay first. That's a maybe. You start saving. A coin here, a favor there. Smuggling's still smuggling, even when you're doing it with a smile and a moral code. You only take from the rich. You only deliver to people who need it more than you. It's piracy with manners. The crew starts jokingly calling you captain. You pretend to roll your eyes, but secretly, you polish the title like a brass compass. One night, a storm hits harder than expected. You're lashed to the helm, hair soaked, teeth gritted, shouting commands like a woman possessed. When it clears, and the sun cuts through the mist like a blade, Maribel looks at you and says, "Well, guess you do know what you're doing." The closest she'd ever come to a compliment. Later, over a meal of hard biscuit and salted pork, she hands you a small parcel. Inside is a key to a sloop, she says, chewing slowly. A fixer-upper. You blink. Seriously. She shrugs. Figure it's time you had your own ghosts to chase. The ship is docked in a hidden cove. Small, battered, and beautiful. It's got a busted sail, a leak near the stern, and a nameplate so faded it just says _Enterprise. But it's yours. You name her the Silent Tide. Fitting. You spend weeks fixing her up, stitching sails, plugging leaks, carving your mark into the tiller. Every nail you hammer is an act of defiance. Every patch of tar, a middle finger to every judge who ever called you a waste of rope. Your first crew is small. One grumpy ex-priest with a gambling problem, 2 sisters who can't read but can spot a lie at 50 paces, and Elise, yes, she, appears one morning at the dock like it's the most normal thing in the world. Hair shorter, smile sharper, thought you'd need a lookout, she says. You don't ask how she found you, you just hand her a rope and say, starboard's yours. The first voyage is short, a test run, smuggling textiles between islands, nothing dramatic. But when you feel that first rush of wind against the sails, you grin like a wolf with a secret. You sleep that night on your ship, the stars above, the sea below, the world, at last, yours to write on. Your ship creaks with personality. The silent tide groans in high winds, hums when drifting, and coughs, yes, coughs when the anchor chain is hauled too fast. She leaks in one corner, nothing serious, just enough to keep your boots humble, and the rudder has a charming squeak, like a baby goat, complaining, but she sails. And that, in your book, is enough. You chart your first proper route with a piece of charcoal and the back of a repurposed wine label. The job: transport dried spices, a crate of medical herbs that definitely aren't legal, and one very suspicious barrel labeled buttons. Nobody ever checks barrels labeled buttons. You've learned that the hard way. It's your first solo contract. You take it from a woman in an alley who smells like burnt cinnamon and talks like she's used to being obeyed. She doesn't care about your past, only that you're fast, discreet, and don't ask what's in the herbs. You nod once. We leave at first tide. Your crew prepares quickly. Elise double-checks the rigging. The sisters sharpen everything that can hold an edge. The ex-priest prays quietly into a mug of something suspiciously brown. As you leave port, no one cheers. There's no crowd, no banner, no song. But you feel it. That buzz in your bones. That familiar churn in your stomach. Not seasickness anticipation. You're back, and this time, it's your name on the manifest. Your name whispered on the wind. Historians still argue how many female pirates returned to the sea after capture. Most assume they were too traumatized, too watched, or simply too broken by the system. But some were stubborn. Some had nowhere else to go. And some, like you, knew they were never meant to live on land. Your delivery goes mostly to for the part where the barrel of buttons explodes. Not violently, more like a surprise party in a crate. Turns out it's stuffed with illegal fireworks. The harbor guard nearly falls off his boat, laughing. You manage to bluff your way past by, claiming it's a wedding gift for a distant cousin. With a flair for the dramatic, you get away with it. That night, you and your crew sit under a blanket of stars, passing a bottle of terrible rum and telling tall tales. Elise brags about the time she escaped a prison transport using only a hairpin and a dead fish. One of the sisters insists she once headbutted a customs officer so hard his wig flew into the next town. You don't tell your story, not yet. Instead, you lie back, stare at the constellations, and let the tide rock you into something close to peace. Word of your return spreads slowly, port by port, a whisper here, a rumor there. Is it true? She escaped, they say, disguised herself as a nun. No, she bribed a governor, or maybe she was the governor. The stories are wild, ridiculous, glorious. You let them flourish, you'll even add to them. In Tortuga, you tell a tavern full of drunks that you once survived a shark attack using only a broken spoon and sheer optimism. They believe you, mostly because Elise is in the corner holding up an actual spoon and nodding gravely. Your legend grows legs, arms, and somehow, pet flamingo. You don't correct a word of it. But here's the strange thing. As your fame rises, so does the risk. Bounties start appearing again. Sketches nailed to tavern doors. None of them look like you anymore, thankfully. But the names, they're close. The Ghost, Lass, Red Jenny, Lady Brine, you use them all. Each port, a new name, a new story. You teach your crew how to vanish. You rotate safe harbors. You pay off one harbor master by pretending to be his long-lost niece. You seduce another by winning a bet about the moons. Position on a foggy Tuesday. This is your life now, sharp-edged, quietly spectacular. And then, one rainy afternoon, you dock on a forgotten stretch of coast. It's not marked on many maps. The docks are old. The tavern is half buried in sand. But the people, they know. They see you. A woman at the bar slides you a drink before you speak. Been waiting, she says. You blink. For what? She shrugs. The next one. Turns out, this town is something rare. A pirate haven. But not just any haven. A female pirate haven, you learn quickly. They don't take orders from men here unless absolutely necessary. The harbor is run by a woman named Dusty, no surname. No nonsense. There are rules, sharp ones. No stealing within the walls. No forced claims. No betrayal. Outside. Fair game. Inside. Sanctuary. You've never felt safer. And more importantly, never felt so seen. Over the next days, you trade maps, swap stories, and pick up 3 new crew members. One of them once impersonated a lighthouse keeper for 6 months. Another is wanted in 3 colonies for unladylike language. You feel at home. You realize something else. You're not the only one who escaped. You're just one of the few who made it loud. The haven has no official name, but sailors call it Witch's Port. Not because anyone's actually casting spells though. Let's be honest. Some of these women give off a very darn single quotes T-cross-me-or-I single quotes LL-hex-your-grandchildren vibe. No, it's more of a title of respect. Fear whispers. You dock the Silent Tide in a narrow slip between 2 ships named the Salt Widow and No Man's Girl. The dockans barely glance at you, just a nod. A coiled rope tossed with ease. They've seen dozens like you, or thought they had, but there's a difference. You're not just hiding, you're building something. Inside the port, everything smells like citrus peels and warm rum. The tavern is called the Black Petticoat, and the moment you step through the door, a parrot screams, "Pay your tab, Clara." No one flinches. Elise takes to the place immediately. She's trading stories with a peg-legged ex-cartographer before you've even sat down. The sisters start playing cards in a corner with a woman who claims to be haunted by a smuggled antique mirror. The ex-priest is already bargaining with the cook for control over the spice shelf. You order a drink, something sweet, spiced, unfamiliar, and you breathe. The walls are plastered with charts, names of women who vanished from the official records but somehow ended up here. There's a painting above the fireplace of a woman with wild hair and a cutlass gripped in her teeth. The plaque says simply Lina, 1722. The uncertainty is deliberate. Historians still struggle to confirm the fates of many female pirates. Some disappeared after their trials. Others reformed. Others simply slipped through the cracks. This tavern wall is filled with those cracks, turned into memory. You ask Dusty, the harbor boss, how many expirits live here? She shrugs. Enough to throw a revolution if we got organized. You laugh. She doesn't. You spend a week, docked, repairing the hull, re-rigging your sails, eating meals that taste like someone knew you were coming. You sleep in an actual bed for 3 nights, soft, creaky, lumpy in the middle, but still heaven. You find a mirror that doesn't judge you, a comb that doesn't break, a book of sea riddles written in 5 different languages. Don't you also find out that one of your bounty posters has reached this far? It's pinned in the latrine, right above the bucket. The artist clearly hasn't seen you in years. Too much hair, not enough teeth, and for some reason you're holding 2 pistols while riding a fish. You consider signing it. Instead, you let it be. You're not hiding from your past anymore. You're evolving it. One evening, around a fire made from driftwood and secrets, Dusty asks you the question no one's dared ask until now. What do you want next? You pause, stare into the flames, because, honestly, you haven't thought about that in a while. For years, your goals were simple: survive, escape, sail again. But now, you think about the younger women you've seen on this journey, quiet, bruised, unsure. The ones who've been used and tossed and told to disappear. The ones who believe there's no place for them but the gallows or a marriage bed. You think about Elise, and yourself. I want a fleet, you say, surprised by your own voice, a network, a place where no one ever has to ask permission to belong. Dusty grins. Well, she says, better start recruiting. So you do. You trade in favors, in whispers. You reach out to women still sailing under other flags, still trapped in old lives. You send messages in biscuit tins, in coded songs, in maps with strange symbols. You rename the Silent Tide to mark the shift. Now, she's called the Wake, because you're not just sailing quietly anymore. You're leaving something behind. A trail, a ripple, a wake. Historians might never fully confirm the existence of this fleet. The records are too scattered, too muddy. Some call it myth, a story told by drunk sailors and embroidered by old women with too much time. But every now and then, a ship disappears from a slave route. A tax boat is found abandoned. A governor's report vanishes mid-journey. And in its place, rumors of a woman-led crew, of a vessel with no allegiance, of a captain with eyes like storms and a voice like rope. You don't need monuments, you don't need songs, you just need the sea and the silence that comes when the world finally stops trying to cage you. You knew it would come, eventually. The day when someone from the old world recognizes you not as a name, not as a whisper, but as you. It happens in a dusty port tavern 2 weeks east of the Witch's Port. You've docked the wake for minor repairs and a little rumor gathering. Elise is off chasing a lead on new recruits. The ex-priest is trying to baptize the rum again, and you're sitting alone, enjoying the miracle of a warm meal that isn't served with the side of paranoia. Then, a voice, raspy, mused, "Well, if it isn't the gallows dodger herself." You turn. He's older, Naufis, sun-browned and split, with salt lines, but you know him. Lieutenant Havers, the one who chained your hands after capture, who personally testified at your trial, who declared, very loudly, that women like you were a blight on maritime dignity. You meet his eyes without flinching. Smile, slow and deliberate. "Blight's doing quite well, thanks." He doesn't reach for a weapon. Not yet. He leans in. "There's still a price on you, you know." You shrugged. "Then you're a very rich man for someone not dragging me out of here." Historians still debate the etiquette of bounty law in the colonies. Technically, anyone could arrest a wanted pirate even years later. But politics, payoffs, and paranoia made it a messy business. The risk of trying and failing was often greater than the reward. And you're not alone. The tavern is, watching, quietly, respectfully. You've built reputation. And reputation, like barnacles, carries weight. Lieutenant Havers chuckles. "You always were trouble." You raise your glass. "That's Captain Trouble now." He considers you for a long moment. Then he tosses a coin onto your table and walks away. The coin is foreign, not worth much, but it says one thing clearly. Truce. Later that night, you gather your crew and tell them the time has come to move again. Not out of fear, but strategy. You can't stay too long in any port where faces from the past stroll in uninvited. You chart a course for the southern edge of the map, to a chain of islands few people visit, and even fewer understand. A perfect place to train, to plan, to grow. But before you leave, something happens. At dawn, you walk to the gallows. Yes, that gallows, the one, still standing at the edge of the port square, now more a monument than a threat. It's weathered, rope frayed, steps sagging. You climb it. Alone, the morning mist wraps around your boots like silk. A few dockhands pause to stare. You reach the top, look out, and you take off your old sosh, the one you wore the day you were sentenced. Stand, tie it to the beam, not out of sentiment, but as a signal, a flag. You're not just a ghost anymore, you're a warning. That night, Elise asks if you're afraid of being caught again, of being tried, hanged, buried, nameless. You shake your head. That woman's already dead, and she is, that girl in shackles, in skirts stiff with sweat, in a courtroom that only saw scandal, not skill. She's gone. In her place stands someone, different, not innocent, but free. You sail with a new wind now, sharper, wiser, and you start recruiting more deliberately. You send coded messages through laundry lines, through market whispers, through books passed hand-to-hand. A woman in Barbados sends you a crate of candied citrus with a note. "I heard you're hiring. I slit my last captain's throat with a spoon. He deserved it." You accept. A fisherwoman from Trinidad offers you 3 ships if you get rid of her abusive magistrate husband. You oblige. He's found the next day, covered in honey and bound to an anthill. Recruitment is booming. Your network grows. And so does the fear. Not among your crew, but in the colonial offices, the shipping lanes, the courts. Because now, every time a vessel disappears, someone mutters, "Maybe it was her." They don't even need to say your name, because your story, now, is bigger than you. It's in tavern songs, in sailor tattoos, in bedtime stories. Mothers whisper to rebellious daughters with pride, not shame. She was caught, she was tried, she was almost hanged, and then, she became the storm. The letters begin as rumors, then arrive as smuggled scraps stitched into hems, tucked inside rum crates, etched faintly into the spines of smuggled Bibles. You read each one with calloused fingers and slow breath. Most are unsigned. Many contain nothing but a single line. Asterisk, I saw your sash. Asterisk, it's become a symbol, now that faded piece of cloth you tied to the gallows. You never meant it to be, but symbols don't ask permission. They're born in moments then, carried by those hungry for meaning. Some letters are longer. A girl in St. Kitts writes, "My father used to beat me for speaking too loud. I buried his keys and took his boat. I hope that makes me one of yours." Midwife from Grenada writes, "They said I'd hang for selling herbs, so I gave them herbs that made them forget who told them so." One note simply says, "If they ever come for me, I'll be ready this time." Historians rarely mention these quiet resistances. There's little room in ledgers for defiance, written in whispers. But your journal grows heavier, thicker with ink and names and stories that'll never make it into naval records. You keep them all, because every name is a lifeline, and every story proves the fire hasn't gone out. You make your way back to Witch's Port with your sails trimmed, sharp, and your name burning hotter than ever. There's a celebration waiting. Dusty throws one of her famous Naughty Festival festivals, because officially, there are no holidays here. Just well-timed explosions and roasted pineapple. A woman reads your palm during the feast. She frowns. "You're too full of ghosts," she mutters. You laugh. "I make room." That night, in the firelight, someone hands you a letter with no address. The seal is wax, marked with a symbol you haven't seen in years, a small loop, like an O with a line through it. It's your father's, or, rather, it's from someone who knew him. You open it cautiously, half expecting judgment. Instead, it reads, asterisk, "Your father spoke of you often. Not kindly at first, but later he said you survived the sea. He never did. I hope that makes sense to you." Asterisk, you read it 3 times, then you burn it, because some anchors aren't worth hauling up again. Instead, you do something else, something dangerous. You write a letter of your own, not to family, to the court. Yes, that court. You sign it under a false name and send it through a dozen hands. Carefully routed, wrapped in so much misdirection it practically apologizes for existing. In it, you say, asterisk, "Your gallows didn't hold me. Your prisons didn't break me. I write not for revenge, but as a reminder. The sea always remembers." Asterisk, you end it with a drawing of your sash. That's it. No return address. No threat. Just truth. Within weeks, you hear whispers that a magistrate in Jamaica resigned suddenly. That the bounty on your head has quietly expired. That someone found a judge's chambers burned, with only a single scrap remaining. A rough sketch of your old gallows. You didn't do it, but someone did. The sisters on your ship say it was karma. The ex-priest says it was divine retribution. Elise just smirks, and keeps sharpening her blade. You take the wake farther now, into deeper waters, past the mapped edge, toward islands that appear and vanish depending on who's watching. There are rumors of a pirate convent. Yes, convent women, run by ex-nuns and full-time smugglers, with rules stricter than the Navy and rum stashes buried in holy crypts. You sail there. And find it. It's real. Stone walls, sharp-edged guards, a chapel where they hide powder kegs behind stained glass. They welcome you like a sister, long lost. You spend a week teaching escape routes and learning how to swear in Latin. The Mother Superior gives you a hand-drawn map of every known British patrol route in the Lesser Antilles. You give her a new compass, engraved with asterisk, "We're not lost, we're waiting," asterisk. You leave with a promise to return, and maybe you will, but for now, there's more work, more whispers, more gallows that need repurposing, because there's still one question that hasn't stopped following you since the first time your boots hit the deck of a stolen sloop. What happens to a female pirate after she's captured? You've found many answers, but the best one, she lives. The wind shifts one evening, sharp and citrus-sweet, the kind of wind that doesn't just move sails, it moves stories. You're lounging on the deck of the Wake, polishing your spyglass with the corner of a map you no longer need, when one of the sisters appears with a bundle of parchment in her hands. "Port gossip," she says. "Fresh." You sit up straighter. Gossip, when you've lived the life you have, isn't frivolous, it's tactical. The parchment is full of names, some familiar, some not. One catches your eye. Rosamond Vane. It's a name you haven't heard in a long, long time. You last saw her in a courtroom, her hands bound, her voice clear. She testified in your favor, shocking everyone, especially the court scribe who dropped his inkwell. She disappeared after that. The story was, she took the pardon, moved inland, married a merchant. Now, rumor says she's resurfaced on the coast of Honduras, running a ship disguised as a missionary barge. You stare at her name for a long time. Not out of fear, out of curiosity you send a letter, coded safe, delivered via a trade ship's cook who owes you 3 favors and half a finger. 2 weeks later, a reply arrives. Short, asterisk, still sailing, still pretending, still remember your laugh. R asterisk, you smile so hard Elise accuses you of having a heat stroke. The truth is, your legend may have spread far and wide, but it's the others, the forgotten, the misfiled, way heavier on you now. Historians still point to the lack of records around these women as proof they vanished. What they often miss is that many chose to vanish deliberately. A quiet, strategic disappearance into a life of their own making. You write Rosamond back. You tell her about the wake, about the fleet, about the sash. Her next letter contains only one line. Asterisk, when you light the signal fire, I'll come. Asterisk, that phrase stays with you. You start to think of the gallows sash as more than just a symbol. It's a signal, an invitation, a dare. So you make more. You stitch them yourself. Same faded red, same frayed edges. You tuck them into hollow tree trunks, bury them in coded books, sew them into the hems of stolen coats. They're markers, waiting for eyes that know what to look for. And the people who find them, they come in a rush. Not in an army, but in twos, in threes, in quiet knots of resolve. A woman with ink-stained fingers who used to forge naval documents, a healer who fled after curing a crew of plague and refusing to let the governor take credit, a girl no older than 15 who speaks 4 languages and carries a slingshot carved with her mother's initials. You take them all. Your crew grows, so does your fleet. It's not grand, not yet, but it's alive. You divide your ships by skill. The oathless handles smuggling, the bitter pearl runs cover. The wake leads training, navigation, and trouble. And as your fleet expands, so does the world's suspicion. Patrols increase. Letters are intercepted. Once, in Nassau, a governor's niece pulls you aside at a party you're definitely not invited to and says, they're scared. You should be proud. Then she slips you a necklace and vanishes into the crowd. The necklace holds a key. You don't ask what it opens, yet you hold on to it because you're starting to understand. Something you hadn't before. Piracy, especially for women, was never just about theft. It was about claiming space, about existing loudly in a world that told you to hush, about laughing at the rules and rewriting the endings. And when captured, what happened next wasn't just punishment, it was erasure. That's what they feared most. Not your dagger, not your ship, your story. So now, every time you dock, you make sure someone new tells it. You pay tavern singers to add your fleet into their ballads. You pay children to draw ships with women at the helm. You tip off pamphlet printers in secret, leaving behind headlines like asterisk pirate queen outsmarts navy again, asterisk woman captains, fleet, governor loses lunch, asterisk gallows, survivor returns with fire. Asterisk, are they exaggerated? Of course, but legends need exaggeration the way sails need wind, and you, dear captain, are at full sail. It happens at dusk, the way most miracles or disasters tend to do. The sky is a smear of copper and bruised purple. Your sails are lowered, and your crew is debating whether eel jerky should be classified as food or punishment. You're halfway through polishing your compass Elise's gift, still smooth and defiant when a ship appears on the horizon. Not just any ship. One, flying colors you haven't seen in years. Royal Navy. You snap to attention. It's not a warship too lean for that, but it's definitely official, bristling with enough firepower to be dangerous, and enough flag flourishes to suggest someone very bureaucratic is aboard. Your crew braces, the old instinct, run, fight, vanish, but you raise a hand, hold, you squint. The ship pulls closer, slowing. No warning shot, no shouted threats, just a small boat, lowering. A single figure rows toward you. She's tall, cloaked, moves like she's bored with danger. When she finally climbs aboard, she pulls back her hood. It's Rosamond, older, yes, softer, not even slightly. You grin. You always had flair. She rolls her eyes. I'm technically an envoy. Of what? Sarcasm. Of clemency. That gets your attention, Rosamond explains over a cup of decent rum. Turns out, a quiet rebellion has been brewing behind the polished walls of imperial offices. A handful of governors disillusioned, tired, slightly drunk on enlightenment, ideals have started offering selective pardons, in exchange for favors, information, navigation, diplomatic leverage, sometimes just not causing problems in front of visiting nobility. You snort. So they want us to behave. Rosamond leans in. No, they want us to look like we're behaving. And just like that, the game shifts. Historians still debate whether pardons like these were legitimate or elaborate stalling tactics. Some think they were carrots dangled to track down elusive rebels. Others think they were desperation wrapped in ribbon. Either way, they existed. And now, one's being offered to you, in writing, with wax and a royal crest. You hold it like it's a sea urchin. Rosamond shrugs. Take it or don't, but it buys you breathing room. You ask the question that really matters. Can I still sail? She grins. As long as you don't fly a skull and crossbones in front of the Spanish ambassador. Fair. You accept. Carefully. Privately, because this isn't the end of your rebellion. It's a tool in it. The pardon changes things. Not everything, but enough. Some ports no longer bribe you to leave. Some officials pretend don't recognize you. Some bounty hunters disappear after accidentally slipping on their own swords. Shame, that, but the clemency comes with paperwork. And paperwork is a whole new beast. Don't you find yourself having to explain things? Your ship's purpose, your crew's background, your intentions. So, you lie. Fluently. You claim to be an independent trader specializing in heritage spices. You register the wake as a historical research vessel, which, technically, isn't completely false. You've definitely uncovered a few forgotten stories. You host 2 dignitaries on deck once, both of whom faint when Elise shows them how to load a hidden cannon. You're a model citizen. For 3 weeks. Then you raid a ship belonging to a corrupt plantation owner, because some habits don't die, and some men deserve to be robbed while still digesting breakfast. The fleet learns to navigate this gray space. Some fly neutral flags. Some become charter vessels. One opens a floating apothecary with suspiciously effective remedies. And yet, under the surface, nothing's changed. The mission is alive. You continue rescuing women on the run. You hide fugitives. You train new sailors, under the guise of coastal safety seminars. And the pardons, they keep coming. One of the sisters gets hers delivered in a silk-lined box. The other uses hers as kindling. Elise. She refuses hers. Feels like naming a hurricane. She says, pointless and smug. You keep yours tucked in the lining of your jacket, not because you need it, but because it's proof that you won, that they blinked first. And sometimes, when you dock in unfamiliar harbors, someone will nod at you respectfully, not out of fear, not out of pity, out of recognition, because they heard what you did, what you're doing. And once, in a tiny island tavern, an old woman takes your hand and whispers, my granddaughter's free because of you. No reward. No anthem. Just that. And it's enough. Some mornings you wake up and everything hurts, knees creaking, back sore, hair refusing to behave, even under a scarf. You hobble to the deck like an old sea witch, and your crew has the audacity to ask, Captain, are we retiring soon? You glare. Pirates don't retire. We fade dramatically into fog. The truth, though, retirement does cross your mind now and then. Not in the rocking chair and knitting sense, more like wondering what a final chapter could look like. That doesn't involve cannonballs or cholera. Historians don't talk much about the retirement of female pirates because, as far as official records go, they didn't retire. They disappeared, they were hanged, or they quietly became someone else. Baking bread under a different name in a coastal town too. Sleepy to ask questions. You've heard stories. One woman allegedly opened a boarding school for difficult girls. Another became a salt trader, living off the coast with 5 cats and a sharp memory. One, your personal favorite, married an ex-naval officer who never once questioned her claim that she used to be a nun. But pensions, pirate pensions, don't make me laugh. No one pays for your years of dodging death, scrubbing decks, and smuggling justice. There's no fund, no watch, no final rum toast. So you start thinking about your legacy. And no, not a statue. You'd hate that. Pigeons always go for the forehead. You think about what you're building, the fleet. The message, the idea that survival isn't enough, that thriving is possible. You start setting aside coin not for yourself, but for others. A chest for bribes, another for buyouts, one simply labeled, if captured. Again, Elise sets up a secret vault on an island shaped like a jelly bean. The key is hidden in a fake molder belonging to the ex-priest, who grins every time you mention it. You also start writing more. Not your journal, letters, to the girls you've rescued, to the ones still running, to the ones you'll never meet. Tell them the things you wish someone had told you. That the first storm doesn't break you. That a name is a weapon. That silence can be power, but so can a well-placed scream. You include a map, a real one, not to gold, but to the witch's port, and you sign it with a name you once feared, yours. And then, as if summoned by your growing sense of sentimentality, a messenger arrives. She's barely out of her teens, skin like sun-polished bronze eyes, steady. She says she's been looking for you for 3 months. Her mother, she claims, was a pirate, captured, disappeared, no records, no trial, no grave, just gone. People said she died, the girl explains, but I think they made her vanish. You nod, you've seen it before. I want to find her, she says, or what's left of her. And you say, welcome aboard, because sometimes the mission is bigger than revenge. It's about remembering, rebuilding, making sure that no one's mother, sister, daughter is forgotten because her story wasn't convenient. You give the girl a job, a bunk, a pair of boots. You add her name to the map. The next day, a new bounty is posted, not on you this time, on the fleet. That's how you know you've made it. They're not after a person anymore. They're after an idea. You gather your crew, no speech, just a nod. They know what it means. The ship turns, the sails snap. You vanish into the horizon because retirement can wait. Right now, there's still a war to win. Storm season comes in without manners, full thunder, sideways rain, and wind that tries to yank your eyebrows clean off. You steer the wake through it like someone who's long since made peace with the fact that nature's gonna win eventually. But it won't be tonight. Lightning cracks overhead. The youngest crew member, a girl from Martinique, who once stole a schooner using only a mirror and a goat, screams joyfully into the gale. Feels like freedom. She shouts, you grin. It's either that or a concussion. The truth is, you've come to love storms. Not just the spectacle, but what comes after. That eerie hush, the water flat as polished bone. The way the crew moved slower, grateful, like people who just outran fate again. You huddle in the galley afterward, soaked, laughing, tearing bread and passing a flask around. Someone tells a story probably about a ghost ship that sails with no one aboard but the echoes of pirate songs. Someone else claims to have seen your sash, tied to a church door in Havana. You don't correct them. Let the myths grow. Let the stories blur, because that's part of the magic now. You're no longer just a person. You're a ripple effect on fact. You've started hearing your own story come back to you in forms you barely recognize. In Barbados, a tavern singer belts out a ballad about the widow queen of the waves. In Port-au-Prince, someone has painted a mural of a woman leaping from a burning ship, sword in one hand, baby in the other. You've never had a baby, or jumped from a burning anything, but you still stare at the mural for a long, long time, because there's truth in there. Not fact, but truth. Historians love their facts, dates, names, ship logs, but truth is messier, louder. It smells like sweat and rum and regret. It lives in song, in gossip, in drawings scribbled on parchment passed from hand to trembling hand. And your truth, it's evolving. You're starting to see it in the way the world talks back to you. Girls no longer whisper when they speak your name. They shout it in one port. A child throws a toy dagger at a Navy patrol and yells, "For the fleet." Before sprinting off, in another, a customs officer quietly lets you pass, saying, "Tell Dusty she still owes me a card game." And in the most surprising turn, yet a magistrate's wife approaches you in a spice market, well-dressed, polite, a hat bigger than your mainsail. "I just wanted to say," she murmurs, "my niece ran away to join someone named Elise. I hope she made it." You pause. Was her name Althea? The woman nods, tears in her eyes. You reach into your coat, pull out a tiny cloth map marked with a constellation and a moon and press it into her hand. "She did," you say, "and that's the thing. Now, you're not just running, you're not just surviving. You're founding something. A myth, maybe. A movement. Definitely. And like any myth, it begins to draw its own shapes in the dark. There are tales of a hidden port where only women sail in and out, of ships that vanish from records and reappear under new names, captained by voices the courts forgot to silence. One rumor even claims you're immortal. Another says you turned into a mermaid and cursed the admiralty. With sea boils, you really like that one. You start carving a small symbol into every harbor post where you dock. Nothing grand. Just your sash. A LOOP, a mark. A reminder. The ex-priest, still delightfully unhinged, starts calling it the flag of the forgotten. The sisters prefer the tide brand. Elise just calls it yours. You don't care what they call it, as long as it spreads. Because now, every gallows you pass is empty. Every jail you sneak someone out of stays open, unlocked, accidentally forgotten. Every new crew member carries a story that begins with silence and ends with sails. You don't always get it right. You've lost friends, you've lost ships, but not the mission, not the purpose. And when the storms roll back in, trying to bluff you again, you meet them head-on, laughing, howling, daring the lightning to aim better this time. Because at this point, you're not scared of being remembered wrong. You're scared of being erased. And that, more than anything, is why you keep sailing. You drop anchor near an island so small it doesn't even get a name on most maps. Just a shape, like someone spilled ink and decided that was cartography enough. It's lush, quiet, full of mango trees, and suspiciously judgmental parrots. You're here for one reason. A meeting, not a duel, not a smuggling drop. An actual meeting, with other captains. Yes. Plural. They arrive over the next day. Sails stitched with disguised sigils. One boat has flowers carved into its bow. Another bears only a black ribbon tied around the tiller. None of them use their real names anymore. But the code is clear. This isn't just reunion, it's a congress. Over roasted coconut and the worst coffee you've ever willingly consumed. You talk strategy. You've heard what they're planning. One captain says, a crackdown, new patrols, coordinated. Another chimes in, they're trying to drown us in paper, permits, inspections, silence through red tape. You nod, you've seen it coming. It's not just the gallows anymore, it's erasure by bureaucracy. Drown them in forms until the sea forgets their names. Historians still argue whether female pirates operated in coordinated networks or whether that's a romantic myth born of desperation for role models. But here you are, sitting on a rock, planning an information war with 3 women who used to be enemies, and now trade sugar roots like friendship bracelets. You agree on new signals, new safe harbors. You appoint a courier captain, someone with a fast sloop, and a talent for talking her way past anyone. She's 15, she swears like thunder, she's perfect. Before everyone leaves, someone asks you what the fleet stands for now. You pause, then answer, we stand for memory, for misfits, for anyone who got told. You can't. Someone raises a bottle. To the fleet. To the tide. Someone else adds. You simply say, to the ones they tried to forget. The fleet disbands before dawn, quietly, efficiently. Each ship sails its separate way, like seeds caught on the wind, and you stay on the island a little longer. You walk barefoot. You sleep on sand. You write in your journal. And this time, instead of recording facts, you write a story, a fake one. Legend. You invent a pirate queen who never got caught, who outlived her enemies, who sailed so far the maps ran out of paper trying to catch her. You name her after yourself, not out of vanity, out of hope, because some girl, someday, will find that story, and believe it, and maybe, just maybe, she'll add her own page later. That week, you return to the port, and you find something new. A merchant's daughter has started painting murals on warehouse walls. One of them shows a woman with a cutlass and a bird on her shoulder, staring at a sunrise. There's a line underneath, painted in red. They never buried her, they just ran out of courage. You stand in front of it for a long time, not smiling, not crying. Just standing, the way trees stand when they've weathered storms and still, somehow, keep growing. Then someone taps your shoulder, a girl, maybe 12, maybe younger. She's holding a scrap of paper. Are you her? She asks. You look at the paper. It's a sketch, a crude one, of you, or something like you. You glance at Elise. She raises an eyebrow. You crouch, smile. What do you think? The girl stares, then grins. I think I want a sword. You pat her shoulder. Good, you whisper. You'll need one. Time is a slow tide now. You no longer count the days in danger or bruises, but in sails mended and stories passed along dockside fires. The urgency is still there, justice never sleeps, but your pace is less sprint, more rhythm, a steadier revolution. The wake still sails, but now she does so with purpose, not panic. She's not just a vessel for escape. She's a classroom, a sanctuary, a whisper moving through the shipping lanes like folklore dressed in real wood and wind. New crew members come and go. Some stay for weeks, others for years. A woman with a voice like honey joins you to escape her wedding. A former tax collector shows up one morning with a ledger full of secrets and a grin like thunder. You teach them all, not just how to rig a sail or read a star, but how to live outside of erasure, how to be loud when they've been told to whisper, how to hold a knife without ever needing to use it. Historians, if they find you now, would be confused. Your name shows up in conflicting records, dead, here, alive, there, pirate, saint, fugitive, hero. There's no single thread, no tidy ending, just hints and echoes. And that, you realize, is the best revenge. Not being remembered perfectly, being remembered widely. One day, while docked in a cove only the fleet knows, you find a box waiting in your cabin, wrapped in oilcloth, sealed with wax. Inside, a journal. Not yours, someone else's. One of the girls you rescued years ago. She's written her whole story, how she escaped, how she learned to sail, how she eventually captained her own ship. The final page says, "Thank you for teaching me how to be unfinished." You stare at the page until your eyes blur, because that's it. You were never meant to be a neat paragraph in someone else's textbook. You were meant to be a seed, a beginning. You sit with Elise that evening on the prow of the wake, feet dangling over the water. "Think they'll remember us?" she asks. You smirk. "They already do." You point out the horizon. "They just don't know our names." She snorts. "Poetic as always. I've had practice." The stars come out like old friends. The tide hums beneath you. Somewhere, out there, another ship is setting sail. Maybe yours, maybe one like it, and on the wind, a girl's voice, practicing a chant. They tried to hang her, but she learned to fly, and now, as the sails quiet and the sky turns that deepest shade of velvet, you let your eyes close, just a little. You're still aboard the wake, but everything's soft, nowsails gently flapping, wood creaking like an old lullaby, the ocean lapping against the hull like it's breathing with you. You can hear distant laughter, your crew. Maybe, or maybe it's just your memory, wrapping you in the warmth of stories told too many times around a flickering lamp. The salt is in the air, faint and familiar, like a perfume worn by someone you haven't seen in years but never stopped loving beneath you. The ship rocks gently, side to side, like the cradle of a sea, too old and wise to ever sleep, but kind enough to help you rest. You made it. You. The girl in the courtroom. The woman in irons. The name on a wanted poster. The myth painted on tavern walls. You sailed through fire and judgment, through storms and silence, and somehow you found peace, not in stopping, but in continuing, in choosing your name, your story, your tide. So let the world spin, let the ships pass. You've earned your calm. And as the waves kiss the shore of some forgotten island, just remember, you were never erased. You were just rearranged. Good night, Captain. And may your sails always catch the wind. End of script. Sweet dreams.